When dealing with old lead tubing like this, I've often been asked, well, what are my options? And when it comes to the tracker bar, obviously, if the old lead tubing is deteriorated, you can take it off the tracker bar and take the regular tubing, regular tracker bar tubing, and just put it right over the nipples on the tracker bar. That's not a problem. In fact, that's never a problem, comparatively speaking. And that's a different subject, but I don't want to get into that. But when it comes to the other end of the lead tubing on the tracker bar, the lead tubing always 99% of the time goes into a piece of wood. It's cemented into a piece of wood. I've shown this on other videos. They used burnt shellac to cement the tubing into the wood, and quite often that connection into the wood is loose, so that you could just kind of wiggle the tubing after you get the burnt shellac off, and you can just wiggle it. I didn't practice this beforehand, so I'm just this is just the way that it normally is, and you can just wiggle the old tubing out, and now you have a piece of lead tubing that went into a piece of wood. I've had these special reducing nipples manufactured. See if I can zoom in on that a little bit. I've had these special reducing nipples manufactured that fit almost perfectly. I forgot to bring myself a pair of pliers here. Fit almost perfectly into the hole. And after you get them set, you can put a little bit of sealer around it, and you're done. You could use PVCE glue. You could use Thin-A-Seal. It doesn't really matter. I got some PVCE glue here. If the nipple isn't all clogged up. There we go. A little bit of PVCE glue around it. Set it in place. And you're done. That's one way to handle the situation. Another way to handle the situation, when perhaps you don't have a lot of room, or you want to do something different, you can cut the, let's see if I get this back in frame here. You can cut the old lead tubing off flush with the wood. Now you've got the lead tubing in there, and you could take I've got this is exactly the same size as the diameter of a replacement nipple. And you could take this, something like this, and put it down in there. Kind of give it a couple of turns there so that it gets, so that it flares the inside edge. And then I thought I had one of these nipples that I flared a little bit. Here it is. And I've taken one of these nipples, and you can see I've sanded the edge on this with a belt sander. Just sanded the edge of this down a little bit so that it wouldn't cut. Because if you tried to force that down into that hole right there, it would cut into the lead tubing, and then you have the shavings of the lead tubing coming down and possibly filling up that hole. So I beveled this edge right here, and then you could take that. Didn't prepare myself very well here. And here again, you could take a little bit of PVC glue, just to make sure you get a good seal. Although I'm sure that the compression of this would create a good enough seal for this. But you put that in there, and then kind of tap that down into the hole. And then you can let that dry, and you have a connection. If you have see if I can find another piece here. And there is one other technique which you could use. Here again, cut this flush off. Take a drill that's the exact same diameter as the nipple, and carefully drill out the hole. And I've drilled this out about 3/8 of an inch. And here again with the glue for a seal. The reason that this technique, the last technique, this one right here, this technique right here, might be a little preferable over this one, is that when you're banging that nipple down into that lead, it might have a tendency to go ahead and push the lead further down into the hole wherever it is, and that might not be desirable. Whereas this technique, you see it just slips right down there. You don't have to force it, and just give it a little twist there, just so that it gets a bite on the area where the drill came in. And that way it's not what's the word that I'm looking for? It's not as aggressive, I guess, as this technique. And you know that the nipple is sitting right down in there, and it's perfectly flush all the way around the inside edges. So those are 3 techniques. And let's say you got 2 pieces of tubing, that you want to connect to each other. So you got two pieces of lead tubing that let's say that you've got one that's messed up like this, it's all collapsed. Let's say that for some reason the lead tubing got collapsed on both ends due to some accident or something like that, and you have to cut out that section. Let's see if I get back in frame here. Okay, see, this tubing is collapsed like this. Say you got two pieces of tubing that got crushed in the back of the stack or something like that, in the back of the spool box, and so you want to go ahead and just cut out that bad section right there, and then what I do is take an ice pick to open the hole back up, primarily open the hole back up, and then take this tool that's got the flared edge on it and stick that down in there about a 1/4 of an inch. On one end, and about a 1/4 of an inch on the other end. And here again, take some glue. And glue it in on that end. And glue it in on the other end. Kinda come on. And kind of press these two together. So you got the right distance, of course, because you had to take out some, and then you've done a splice. So those are a few techniques on dealing with lead tubing that's not deteriorated. As you could see, looking down on the inside of this tubing that I cut out, there's no oxidation. You can see around the inside edge right there. You can see that there's no oxidation on the inside edge of that, so you know that this tubing is still in good shape, and it doesn't have the white powder that's typical on the white powder on the outside, which is normally an indication that there's corrosion. In fact, we can just lightly clean this off. Get the old glue, because there was some glue or something, like probably shellac or something like that that they had that was holding these pieces of tubing together. And you can see that this tubing still has good integrity. There's really nothing wrong with it. And as long as nobody eats the lead, it's perfectly safe. So those are a number of the techniques that I use.